Okay, we're going to try another version of reading the player data from a file. I've created a player file called players2.txt. It's the same data that was in the other one, except having everything in a fixed length field with blanks on the end to make every column the same width. What I've done is I've made it a comma delimited file with commas in between the individual fields on each row. So if I do that, then I can use the split method to pull everything out instead of using substring to pull everything out. So we are going to write another program, another function. It's going to be similar to this one. I think I'll just copy this. And we'll call it read players 2. Okay. We will need a stream reader in here. And what we're also going to do in this one is we are going to assume that there are 3 records, 3 rows of data in the file. So we can use a for loop instead. Okay, so we're going to make several things easier. So for, and normally you don't know how many things are in a file. Sometimes you do, but probably more often you don't know how many items in a file, and so typically you need to use the while loop down here, where you do this little peak thing at the end, and if peak is less than 0, then you jump out. We're going to do it with a for loop, and we are going to read in a line, just like we did before. Okay, so that line is exactly the same. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to declare an array of strings. And I'm going to call it fields because we're going to break this line up into fields. Line.split. And then here what you do is you can pass in an array of characters, but I see there are 6 versions of this. I think there's one where I can just pass in a string. Let's go through here and see. That requires an array. That requires an array. Array. Okay, everything requires an array. So let's go back to version 1 here. And it needs a character array. So you can initialize an array constant just by putting curly brackets. It's a little bit like Python. But if you put a character in, a character is different from a string in C#. Character requires single apostrophes rather than quotation marks around it. And I might have to put new char equals. And let's see what the error message is here. Okay. There is probably a way to do that, but I'm not going to mess around with the notation. I'm just going to create a character array up here, and I'm going to call it Delimiters equals, and then I think I can do this comma here. Okay, so it lets me do it there. It doesn't like it if I try to do it down here, so at least not with the syntax that I was trying. So let's put Delimiters down here. That's a character array. And it will look for whatever characters I have in there, and I've only got 1, so it's going to look for every comma. It's going to use that to split things up. So after I do this, fields will now have 5. It's a 5-element array. It'll have the first name in element 0, the last name in element 1, the team in element 2, the hits in element 3, and the at-bats in element 4. So now what I need to do is I need to declare string. Actually, you know what? The first 3 are strings already, so I don't need to worry about those. And I just realized something. I just have a single field for player name. I don't have a first and last name, so I'm going to have to do something here. I'm going to have to do string player name equals, and it's going to be fields sub 0. Plus, I want a spacing between the first and last name, otherwise it's going to look funny. And I also need to spell fields correctly. Okay, so that'll give me first and last name together. The team will be fields sub 2, so I don't need to copy a string variable into another string variable. It doesn't accomplish anything. But I do need an integer variable called hits. And that's going to be convert to, I lost it. Let me try it again. Dot to int32, and I want to convert fields sub 3. So that's my hits. And I want another one okay. Then what I can do is I can copy these two lines right here. No, I don't have a field called team. I don't have a variable called team, but I do have something in my fields list at position 2 that is the name of the team. And count is being incremented down there. Let's make sure it's initialized to 0 up here. So that should create my array for me. So if I change this to read players 2, it'll call this one instead of the other one. It'll read players 2. I better change my file name, players2 text. And it will split it up based on the comma delimiter. It'll go through here 3 times. It'll put the elements into the array of ball players, baseball players. And then it'll print it out, and we should get the same stuff printed out that we did before, unless I made a mistake in here, and we'll find out right now if I did or not. So our last 3 lines should be Babe Ruth, Ted Williams, Mickey Mantle. And they are. So it worked. So there's more than one way, to get that data from a file. If everything is padded with blanks to make every field on the line the exact same length, then what you need to do is you need to use substring to pull the data out. If the items are variable length, but they're separated by a delimiter character, like a comma, then the easy way to do that is split. And it's not much difference in terms of the amount of code you have to write or the amount of logic or how difficult it is. They're pretty much the same either way. But those are probably the 2 main ways that you can pull data from a file when you've got multiple fields on a line and you need to split up those fields.